Well, good day. Brian Williams here with you on a busy Thursday afternoon, 3 p.m. hour getting underway here in the east, 12 noon out west. Our friend Nicole Wallace has the day off. We begin, as we always do, with the headlines at this hour. Just moments ago, we heard from the newly minted and newly revealed Democratic presidential ticket. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris received a briefing from public health and economic experts on the state of the coronavirus pandemic and its impact on our economy. They called for the implementation of a national mask mandate, something the Trump administration has thus far declined to do. This comes as the coronavirus took the lives of another 1,500 American souls just yesterday, the highest daily death toll since the middle of May. 17th day in a row in our country with a daily death toll of over 1,000 Americans. The number of confirmed cases in the U.S. now stands at nearly 5.25 million. The government reported that 963,000 Americans have filed first-time claims for unemployment insurance last week. First time that number has been less than a million since the middle of March. All told, roughly 28 million people are still receiving some form of unemployment benefits as of the week of July 25th as the economic catastrophe continues. President Trump upped the ante in his battle against mail-in voting today. He appeared to say the quiet part out loud, telling Fox News why he opposes a funding boost for the U.S. Postal Service.
They want $25 billion for the post office. Now, they need that money in order to have the post office work so it can take all of these millions and millions of ballots. Now, in the meantime, they aren't getting there. By the way, those are just two items. But if they don't get those two items, that means you can't have universal mail-in voting because they're not equipped to have it.
The U.S. Postal Service disputes the notion that it is not equipped to handle the extra load, telling NBC News it is able to adjust to deal with a high volume of election and political mail. In the midst of all of this, the president announced a diplomatic breakthrough. It's a lot. He said that Israel and the United Arab Emirates agreed to normalize relations. As part of the agreement, Israel will suspend plans to declare sovereignty over parts of the Palestinian territories and work to expand relationships with other countries in the Middle East. Israel already has agreements with its neighbors, Egypt and Jordan. As we said, it's a lot. Joining us for our lead-off discussion this afternoon, Dr. Peter Hotez, founding dean of the National School of Tropical Medicine at the Baylor College of Medicine and director of the Center for Vaccine Development at the Texas Children's Hospital. Anna Palmer, Politico senior Washington correspondent and co-author of Playbook, and Jason Johnson, professor of politics and journalism at Morgan State University and a contributor over at the Grio. Good afternoon and welcome to you all. Dr. Hotez, your topic leads this hour. First of all, your opinion of what Biden and Harris are calling for the next 3 months, a national mask mandate, as opposed to the policy or lack thereof we've seen thus far.
Well, Brian, you've hit on it, right? I mean, this is what we've been missing from the White House this whole year, is having a national strategy, national unification about what we need to do. And this is, as you point out, has led to the worst COVID epidemic anywhere on the planet. The United States still remains today the epicenter of the epidemic with, just in the last 7 days, we lead the world in new coronavirus cases and new coronavirus deaths, with this terrible number yesterday with 1,400 deaths or more. So we need to take action, and we've been calling for a national strategy. What the Biden and Harris team has called for is a good first step. At least let's have masks on everyone, which can prevent the number of cases of increasing. The unknown part about the masks is whether that's enough to really bring it down to where we can safely open up schools across, especially in the southern states where the epidemic is still raging, and whether we're going to need more aggressive measures in some of our southern states. Right now, you cannot open schools safely in Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, many parts of Texas and Florida. So we've still got to fix that. But at least we heard finally about a national agenda, which we haven't had, and putting scientists out front and debunking a lot of the anti-science misinformation. So these are welcome developments, to say the least.
Well, on the anti-science misinformation front, vaccines, of course, have been your life's work, and part of your life's work, nothing you asked for, has been fighting the anti-vaxxers, something in which you have years of experience, sadly. When we finally had a vaccine, and we did a long segment on this last night, it is not too early to start trying to counter some of the misinformation we're bound to see and hear.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. We have 2 surveys now coming out of Reuters and the Associated Press finding up to half of Americans will not accept COVID-19 vaccines, even if they're made available. And this is an anti-vaccine movement that really started to take off around 2015. And it was linked very much to some of the elements at the far political right, and it was accepting funds from Tea Party sources and other sources. And it's caused a lot of damage in terms of declining vaccination rates for existing vaccines across Texas and many other states. But now we're worried about Americans not accepting COVID-19 vaccines. And now those same anti-vaccine groups have enlarged their remit. So under the banner of what they call health freedom or medical freedom, they're now campaigning against masks and contact tracing and social distancing, making it impossible to fight this epidemic. So we really need an aggressive effort. I've been fighting this for years. With their assertions that vaccines cause autism, and written a book about that. Vaccines did not cause Rachel's autism, about my daughter, and debunking that aspect. But they continue to gain strength and momentum, and we've got to put a stop to it. And hopefully now we have some hope on that front.
Anna, to help us make the turn into pure politics, not that medicine and politics don't have a vast intersection these days, for people who weren't watching the last hour, I want to play just a bit of the Democratic ticket individually talking about their proposal for a 3-month national mask mandate.
Every single American should be wearing a mask when they're outside for the next 3 months at a minimum. Every governor should mandate mandatory mask wearing. The estimates by the experts are it will save over 40,000 lives in the next 3 months. 40,000 lives. The people act responsibly. And it's not about your rights, it's about your responsibilities as an American.
So what real leadership looks like is Joe Biden, to speak up, sometimes telling us the stuff that we don't necessarily want to hear, but we need to know. And the need for this mandatory mask wearing will also be about what Joe has articulated and what a Biden-Harris administration will do.
So, Anna, just to reorient everyone, health briefings ideally are to come from the public health experts within our government. That's what they are. Members of the coronavirus task force have been almost invisible and silent over these past several weeks. We note the president has added Dr. Atlas to that list, a doctor who we've seen on Fox News, strong advocate for getting back to school. Is this ticket and the advisors around them, are we getting into kind of a public health, a government in exile, 2 alternative views of the world here?
I think what you're seeing is the Biden-Harris ticket trying to really differentiate itself right now. Obviously, the president kind of takes up all the oxygen in the room almost every day in politics, with either doing interviews or tweeting. And when you look at what this administration has done around the coronavirus, it's been fits and starts. And for a long time, the president himself would not encourage people to wear masks. Now he does. But, he feels like he's the best messenger for the White House. He doesn't like it necessarily when they have, Dr. Birx or Dr. Fauci, when they get kind of doing too much press. He's going to do a press briefing today. I think what we saw was a strong contrast right now. This is a ticket that has said, we are going to be the party of science. We are going to be the party that listens to what health experts say. And so I think they're trying to show as much as possible in a campaign sense what leadership under President Biden would look like.
Jason Johnson, the daily briefing at the White House really does seem to describe a pandemic other than the one we are living. All of the stats are rosy, everything's on the up and up, and the president emphasizes the percentage of our country where the pandemic is not a problem.
Yeah, Brian, I mean, this is a preview of what we're going to see after Election Day. This is almost like in England where you may have the sitting government and a shadow government. They are presenting two completely different ideas as to what America is. The two Americas, as we used to hear from John Edwards 10, 12 years ago. On the one hand, you have two candidates, Joe Biden and Senator Harris, who are running on competence. Not just science, but just competence. Actually having a plan, actually saying this is how we manage this. On the other side, you have an administration that is literally running on maintaining power. An administration that's saying not only is the pandemic not really an issue, but we've given up on any attempt to come up with financial or structural assistance to people who are still suffering for the pandemic that they don't want to acknowledge. So I'm not going to be surprised if we're going to continue to see these sort of opposing views going forward. What's going to be interesting is how the American people feel, and not just whether or not they agree with Joe Biden and Senator Harris, which I think most people do, but do they think they'll be able to implement these things should they end up winning the election in November?
Jason, can you believe your good fortune in being able to live long enough to see an American president diminish and try to slow down the U.S. Postal Service?
I got to tell you, and I've said this before, I got a new car. I've been waiting for my license plate to show up. This slowed down mail is a very real thing. People are not getting checks, not getting resources. And there's a great story that came out today. I think this is really important for people to understand. When a president is attacking the Postal Service, he's attacking veterans, he's attacking women, he's attacking the disabled. There's a story that came out in Vice today that 19 mail sorting machines have been taken out of 5 processing centers across America as a new and unexplained policy that will slow down the ability to sort mail on top of cutting back on overtime. This is nothing but a naked power grab by this presidency to make sure that he can't be voted out of office. It is terrifying. I've lived long enough to see it. I hopefully will live long enough to see it end.
Anna, indeed, the group Vote Vets is out with a devastating spot today, reminding everybody, I think the stat is 330,000 American veterans expect deliveries on a daily basis, averaged out, right, of prescription drugs via the U.S. Postal Service.
Yeah, I mean, the dependence that we all feel, whether it's I'm waiting for my license to get delivered as well now because the D.C. government has, you don't go in and get your license anymore. I mean, these kinds of things are real life issues that people need to have the Postal Service working. I also think there's really a conflation here around what Pelosi, Speaker Pelosi and Chuck Schumer were wanting to do in terms of increasing the amount of money towards the U.S. Postal Service in the COVID relief talks, and what the president's really concerned about, which is this being able to have people vote absentee. He is really alone in his party. There's not a lot of Republicans at the state level who are echoing him. A lot of them think that actually it could be beneficial to Republicans who often, when you look at their demographics, are older voters that are potentially susceptible to COVID-19, who aren't going to want to go to the polls. And so you really have this contrast of, I think, again, kind of these parallel tracks of what is fact and what does this presidency say around mailing in voting in terms of funding the actual Postal Service. It's been a long time fight that the president has had pre-COVID-19, all the way back to some of the kind of battles that he was picking with Jeff Bezos and Amazon and the fact that they use the Postal Service.
Well, look at us all here in 2020 debating mask wearing in the middle of a pandemic and talking about a slowdown of the U.S. Postal Service. Quite a conversation topic, as it is every day. Our thanks to our guests this hour, Dr. Peter Hotez, to Anna Palmer and Jason Johnson, for starting us off correctly on a Thursday afternoon. A break in our